Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining today's webinar, Profits Under Control, Strategies to Manage Food and Labor Costs. My name is Clarissa Zilberman. I'm the Marketing Content Manager here at R365, and I'm excited to be with you today. First, we'll get on with some housekeeping items. And then we'll get right into the presentation, followed by a quick Q&A. Please submit any questions you have by clicking on the question mark in the toolbar on your screen. A link to the webinar recording will be sent to you in the next few days for you to rewatch and share around with your team. And if you need any help at any time, you can contact us at marketing@restaurant365.com. I'm thrilled to introduce our presenter today, Paul Badeski. Paul is the Manager of Customer Success at Restaurant 365, where he has been supporting restaurant partners since 2018. He began his journey as an implementation coach before transitioning to the professional services team. And for the past 3 years, he has led customer success efforts. Prior to joining R365, Paul built a strong foundation in restaurant operations with leadership roles at Darden, Chuy's, Dave & Buster's, California Pizza Kitchen, holding positions across the kitchen, front of house, bar, and eventually as a general manager. Outside of work, Paul enjoys traveling with his wife and 2 kids and has recently picked up pickleball, chasing the latest craze. Alrighty, Paul, let's get started. Off to you.
All right. Thank you very much. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this wonderful day. It's humbling hearing about yourself in the background there, so it's kind of nice. Yes, I have had a long journey within the restaurant sector and swapped over about 7 years ago over into the software side of things. And so one of the greatest passions I had when I was a restaurant manager was obviously controlling cost. And with that, like, I always had repetition. I always had a toolbox that I used and that I reverted back to, and I made sure I was using on a consistent basis. The 2 largest buckets of costs that we can control in the restaurants are going to be our food costs, and it's going to be our labor costs. And so during the webinar today, what we're going to do is we're going to open these tools that are in our toolbox. We're going to start with our actual versus theoretical. That's a report, and it's pretty self-explanatory. It's going to compare what we have been using in the restaurant versus what we should be using based on what we're selling out of our POS, our point of sale system. Then we're going to go through and we're going to look at one of the P&Ls that we have. This one is strictly, it's labeled as the operations statement. And this one is the best one for everyday operators to use. This will give you a running weekly P&L that runs off of your operational calendar. And then it is going to encompass a week by week to the month end. We're going to be able to use this and compare this against the budget. And we're going to be able to see year over year as well. And then we're going to have the labor goals. And we're going to use the labor goals that are set up in our location records. We're going to talk a little bit about the labor matrix. And so in our toolbox, we have our food cost is going to be number 1. Our labor cost is going to be down on number 3. And the P&L, number 2, that's where you can see both of those costs together. All right, so what is actual versus theoretical? And how do we get that, and how do we make the most out of it? Well, it's quite simply, we attach a recipe to your menu items that are coming into the system. We grab these menu items from your POS, they come in daily on your DSS, and then we go into the grid and we create a recipe. Those recipes have the ingredients in them, and those ingredients are our purchased items. And each of these purchase items we use in our inventory counts. And we receive those items into the system through our AP on our invoicing. And so this is where it's very, very important to have accurate data. Data in, like clean data in, good data is good data out. We want to be able to rely on the data that we have into the system. All right, so once we attach those recipes, we're going to make sure we have the accurate counts, and we're going to make sure that we have accurate receiving. And I'm going to go over the top reports that we would use when we say key operational reports. All right, so here is the end result of our actual versus theoretical. We're going to start at the end game and work our way back. And so when do we want to run this report? Well, this report can be run anytime you've done an inventory count, whether these are daily counts that you're going to do for just your hot counts with your key items, or if it's going to be your weekly count, or if this is going to be your monthly count. And the great thing about the actual versus theoretical report is it works off of a beginning count and an ending count. So say you are doing daily counts, I can do this just for the single day that happened yesterday. I can do it if today is Thursday, I can do it from Monday to Wednesday, and I can see what my actual versus theoretical is throughout the week. So all I need is a count, an inventory count, to run this report. And what are we going to be looking at in this report? Well, we're going to be trying to identify the high variance items. Now, I caution because high variance doesn't necessarily equate to dollars. And so we can see on this report on the about the middle left of the page, you can see we have quantity usage. And then further to the right in this report, we see the dollar usage. Now, I spend about 90–95% of my time on the quantity usage that's coming in, because regardless of the price of the product, there's a certain amount of that product I should be using. And that's how I get my actual, and that's how I'm going to get my theoretical. Now, I can be wasting something, say like turmeric, but I'm not going to be, making any money. I'm not going to be saving a lot of money just by focusing on that turmeric if I have a high variance. I may have a lower variance, but a high dollar amount on my protein items. And that's what I have up on the screen right here. I have some protein items for some suggestions. And so that's where the 5% is spent on. I look at my quantity, I look at my variances, and then I can shift over to the right-hand side to see where the highest opportunity, the most opportunity I have to save is. And in this one, you can see I have about, $93 in meat. I've got, $34 in chicken, 37. So those are pretty even right there. All right, so the actual versus theoretical report. This is the only report where we're going to be able to see our beginning plus purchases minus transfers and ending to get our actual usage, right? This is the actual usage. So this is from the back door to the table, and then from the table to the back door, we can pretty much track these products. And so when we see our beginning inventory, we're going to run across the top bar of this report right now. We're going to see our count U of M. We're going to see the average cost of these items. We're going to see our beginning, our purchases. Transfers would be the store transfers that you can do within the system. And the ending is going to be your ending count that you do. That's going to give you your actual. Now on this theoretical line right here, the number that is pulling the theoretical, that is coming from the actual recipes that are associated with the menu items. And that's what gives us our variance, right? And we're going to go over a report that we can show just exactly which items have the theoreticals attached to them and which ones need. So we'll need the attention. So we'll go over that in just a minute. We also see we have a waste column there, the numbers in red. So this is if we are doing waste logs within the system, and this is going to account for a variance. So that would be your explained variance. Not saying that it's good, not saying that it makes everything right, but we're saying that we know what happened to these items. We also have donation logs that we can do, and then we have unexplained variances. And unexplained variances are just that. That's something that invokes a conversation with the team to figure out, hey, what happened to this item? And then you can go back and you can say, is this a receiving issue that we have? Is this, so you can, any of the blue numbers that you see, you can dive into. And I can go in and I can look at my purchasing and I can see if all my invoices are there. Maybe I missed an invoice. Maybe I had an extra invoice that posted this week from last week, so I can dive into those numbers. And you really want to, again, have that conversation as to what the unexplained variance is. And then we have the efficiency rating. And this one's a little extreme because we're actually growing all the items on the efficiency, and that's not where we want to be. But the efficiency, you want to be as close to 100% as you can. Now, some items like beef, you know that you're going to have some kind of yield off of those items. And so that's going to affect your efficiency over there. But the higher the efficiency, the better. All right. So now we're looking at, we want to have a benchmark. So even if when we're talking about what should our theoretical be, well, what gets focused on gets results, right? And when you first start an actual versus theoretical, you may be high, right? You have to set that goal for yourself. You have to make sure that all the recipes are attached. You have to make sure that the data is looking good. But once you get it to a certain point, you need to start looking at that benchmark. Say your proteins are at maybe at 8%, right? Now you're going to start working on those. You're going to have those conversations. You're going to put SOPs in place, and you're going to really focus on those. So, we were talking about limiting food waste. We're talking to get our theoretical where it needs to be. And so, if it's not on your shelf, you can't waste it. So let's make sure we're keeping our inventories low. Let's make sure that those inventory levels are consistent. Those can be done by proper forecasting. And we're also going to see a sneak peek of the forecasting tool that we have a little bit later on when it comes to the labor piece as well. And then in invoicing, we want to make sure that the AP invoicing that we receive the price and the quantity correct. And we're going to go into a report as well that shows us and helps us identify areas of opportunities for that. And then we want to look for the recipes for the theoreticals. And we want to make sure that we have those attached to the menu items. Now, when you're just starting off, you think, hey, I've got, hundreds of recipes, I've got hundreds of ingredients, and, how long will this take? And I always tell people it's a progression, right? I always like to start on center plate, the items that you spend the most money on, think of, your proteins, the high dollar items. It could be some liquors too, right? That you're wanting to really, that you sell a lot of vodka or something like that. So, when you're putting recipes into that theoretical, you don't necessarily have to build out the whole recipe. If, say, we'll just use chicken tenders as an example. If I have, several different items, many items, 20 items that use chicken tenders, I don't have to write out the recipe for every single thing in that, or sorry, every single ingredient in that recipe. I just have to put how much chicken tenders I want to deplete every time that menu item is hit. And then I can start to build on that. But if I have the chicken tenders attached to those menu items, I'm at least going to be depleting those chicken tenders out of the inventory to give me a theoretical. And like I said, then I can start building and building and building. Looks like my computer's still loading up. So the best report that we're using to look to see how our AP is coming in is going to be the item price change analysis. And in this one, it's going to really make sure that we're consistent in having a price on our AP. Now, when we come in, you're going to be able to do this if you want to do it just by location, if you want to do it for multi-locations to see how everybody's receiving, you can do that. But you're going to pick a period of time, and we're going to have a beginning and an end of time. And this is going to give us the price of the item at the beginning of this count, and it's going to give us a average price throughout this time period. And then we're going to be able to see our difference. We do have categories in this report that we can set as parameters. If we're only looking at protein, if we're only looking at liquor, you can do that. And I always recommend to start at least 20%. You're looking for things that are outside the norm, right? Stuff will fluctuate here and there. And we do have variances built into the item categories so that on your invoices, when you're receiving those invoices, you can find those smaller variances. These are ones we're looking for that are larger variances. All right. And so here's what the report looks like. The first thing you want to do is go over, you see in that red box in the top right-hand corner there, mid right-hand corner. That's to sort the column of your COGS impact from high to low, low to high. And when do you run this report? Well, you run it weekly and prior to using the inventory template. You're trying to make sure that all the prices that are going to be on your template are the correct price. If you update a price, if you say you receive an invoice after you've started a template, there is a refresh cost button that you can use within the inventory to pull it up. But this one ensures that you have the least amount of discrepancies with the cost on your inventory count. And what's the reason? Well, we want to look for variance and we want to validate price fluctuations. So we want to make sure if something goes from, you see the second line there, $82 down to $12 for a case. Well, we know that there's something wrong in our AP. And so we really want to find out. Now, if that was a true statement, that would be awesome because that's telling us we saved a lot of money, right? But in reality, we can look at that and say, oh, it looks like we got a split pack and somebody received a case at a split pack price. Now, if you hit the button again that we have in the red box over there, that's going to show you items that started at a lower level and ended at a high level. And so you're still looking to see if it's vice versa, right? If you had something that came in and we've now, said that it's the wrong price. Now, some things can be true, right? I always use avocados as an example. Avocados, you can be paying $40 a case today, and in 2 weeks, maybe that went up to $100 a case, right? And so if that is true, then we need to make sure that the communication is there amongst all the locations as well to say, hey, we may need to source this somewhere else. We may need to tighten up on the inventory or the usage of those items. So this is a very key report that we're using. So we can see we're going to use the default unit of measure. So it's going to have whatever unit of measure came in, the price as of the beginning date, and then the average price is the price in blue at the middle. And those are the variances you're looking for. All right. So the next report we're going to look at is going to be for the theoreticals. And this is where we're looking to monitor our menu items to make sure we have the right recipes attached. And this one, you can do the same. You can run it by locations. You can do it throughout a period of time. We can do it for categories that are based off the menu item categories within the menu item grid in the system. All right. Now, with this menu item analysis, this is going to identify the menu items that needs recipe or needs recipe attention. And the reason for this is we want to make sure that we have accurate theoreticals coming into the system. And so the box that we have highlighted right here is the cost. So this would be the cost of the ingredients that are in my recipe. Now, maybe it costs 92 cents to make the chicken bowl. Maybe it costs $2.07 to make the Korean barbecue beef bowl. But I'm not sure. But we do see some $0 items in there. The small chicken bowl is 67. So that's what we want to look at because we can look at that and say, okay, well, we're selling these items for, if you look at the first one, the chicken bowl, $10, but I only have 92 cents in ingredients in that. That's probably not right. Now, again, data in, data out. Once you know this data is accurate, this menu item analysis report can also help you do just that. It can analyze your menu and you can see which ones are the opportunities, star, dogs, or puzzle, and help you decide which items you want to keep. All right. And so also when you're looking to boost your margins and you're looking to make sure that the costs are accurate, we want to make sure that we are, counting all items we have. And even working some of the paper goods, paper products into the recipes, such as napkins, coffee filters, etc. Say you are a quick serve place and 90% of your food does get put into plastic containers. They're going to use a straw. They're going to use a cutlery kit. All those can be built into your recipe as well. So you can get some, actual versus theoretical, even on your paper goods. And same thing with delivery and takeout. If you want to build those items into the recipe, you can do that as well. On the left-hand side, that's just a quick snippet of what the waste log would look like from the mobile app. All right, so knowledge is power. All those reports that we just went over, those are reports that your store level managers can run. And we need to make sure that we're training them, and we need to retrain our employees to properly store, monitor, and use those ingredients. We need to make sure we implement a plan for reducing food waste. Back in the day when I was in the kitchen, we had the Lexan on the prep table, and instead of throwing stuff away, you put the food into the Lexan just to see how much you were wasting throughout. But it's also when you're on the line and seeing how much of that food gets wasted as well. When you're doing the waste log, you don't necessarily have to account for every single item to at one time on a weekly basis. But again, what gets measured gets results. So if you want to pick 10, 15 items that you want to focus on, you can memorize a template, a waste log template, and then you can use that and just have those filled out. But make sure we empower our employees to see what they do in prep and on the line and how that impacts the company's overall success. All right. And now we're gonna jump into the profit and loss. So when you go into the profit and loss report, there are about 30 to 40 different profit and loss statements that you can see. And so we're going to choose the operation statement. And this is the best one to complement the actual versus theoretical report. We want to make every action count. And so what we're going to do is when we say complement the reports, we can run the AVT, we can look for our variances, we can run into the P&L, and we can look at the categories that we have, and we can see, again, with that benchmark of what our food cost should be, is it higher or lower where we need to be? Did we make a jump? And if we did, we can then go into the actual versus theoretical and look at that same category and start to find out where our trend was. Was there a certain item, one specific item that has a higher variance this week than we usually have? When we're looking at the P&L statement, we want to look at that and we want to see our trends. Do we have higher sales than, do higher sales always equal lower percent? Hopefully they would, right? The whole sales cures all thing. But when we're looking at this operation statement, that's where we're talking about, we're not only going to be looking at our COGS, but we're also going to be looking at labor, supplies as well, and we will see the sales on there. All right. And so here's a view of what the operation statement looks like. And this one was ran at the end of the period. And so you can see that we have a weekly P&L. And to get the most out of the system, we want to make sure that we are counting on a weekly basis. If we are only counting on a monthly basis, when we're looking at our COGS, that would only be the usage because the system doesn't think that we have the items in there. It thinks we used them. And it's only going to really show our purchases. So it wouldn't be till the period to date that our cost would actually be true here. But we will see a running total of sales. And you can even use this as a declining budget. We see the period to date, we see the total period budget, and we can see the variance, right? And so in this, we can set the budget and we can say, you know, in this case, it will be, are we going to reach the sales that we're budgeted? Are we not going to reach it? Are we going to reach the COGS that we are? And then once we get down to supplies, we're going to be able to actually use that as a declining budget to be like, hey, I'm budgeted maybe 5,000 in paper goods this month, and I slowly see that ticking up week to week. And that way, when I'm going into my fourth week, I can say, am I close to budget? Am I over budget or am I under budget? Right. And so we start off, we have sales, we have the COGS. And then in the next part of it, is this would just be further down on the report, we would see the labor, and then we would see supplies as well, our controllable costs. And, you know, just like we're talking about, if we want to see how our labor is doing, let's look for trends. And again, we can use it on supplies as a declining budget. So this is the operation statement. So the labor piece right there, this is again where what we're just about to be going over is going to show us where those results are. We're going to set goals for our labor, everything that we're going to do for the labor piece. This is where we're actually see the actionable item as far as what our labor costs would be as well. All right. So but back to when we're looking at, you know, what's another tool that we have in the system to make sure that we're consistent on our cost across the board. So we're going to jump into what I call the money report. And this is the item price verification report. And in this report, this is going to take, especially if you have multiple locations, this is extremely useful. And the more locations you have, even in different regions, this is awesome. All right. And so what it's going to do is it's going to show you the items. It's going to show you what each location is paying for those items. It's going to show you the low price, the high price, and it's going to show you your variance. So going back to the beginning of the webinar, when we were talking about data in, data out, this is also a report that can help you see whether or not you have consistent data coming in across all your locations. Now, we did have a true story because I was on site with a client. We had just got done doing inventory, their first inventory for 60 locations. And when we ran this report, we noticed that people were paying a different price for a single item, and it was soy sauce. And they were just they were just purchasing it as a different pack size. But the good thing about this report is, regardless of the pack size that you're purchasing it makes them all a unified purchased U of M. And so it would be, if I purchased this U of M with the price of the product that I paid, this is what it would be. And so when we dove into the soy sauce, we had 3 different units to measure that were actually coming in: 6 half-gallon, 4 1-gallon, and a 5-gallon. And most people were buying it by the 6 half-gallon. And the price difference from the 6 half-gallon to the 4-gallon was $12 a gallon. And there was only 2 of the 60 stores that were buying that one. And so we actually went through and were able to, I'm going to jump 2 slides ahead to show you, we were actually able to get the fluctuation. You see this line right here, that's the variance in price. We had all the locations go to the same price, and that's what the savings looks like right there. You want to make sure you have consistent pricing across all the locations. Now, another example you can do is you can look at your high dollar items. And this was another client of mine that I had. We looked at the top 3 items that they purchased, which was ribeye, lobster tail, and sirloin. And between the 60 locations, this one has 61 locations. Between their locations, they had a 6.5% difference in price between 21 locations that they had. The lobster tail had a 10% difference. The tri-tip sirloin, they had a 9% difference. And so the spend of those 3 items at just these 21 locations that we were looking at was $653,000 in 6 weeks. So imagine just moving a couple percentages here and there on those 3 items. Again, saving considerable amount of money. All right, so if we look at those key operation reports, we have the actual versus theoretical, we have the profit and loss, we have the item price change analysis, and we have the item price verification. All right, perfect. All right, so now we're going to move on to labor. And so when we're looking at labor, we really just need to get it started. If we're not tracking labor and you start tracking labor within our system, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people, different clients, and it's safe to say you can save at least 3 to 5% on your labor if you just start tracking these three items right here and get the system up and implemented. And so we're going to set up some goals in our location records. We're going to use our forecasting tool, and then we're going to schedule our shifts. And then we're going to check our metrics. You know, how did we do? Once we set the goal and we scheduled the shifts, we forecasted, how did we perform based off that? And so setting up the goals is pretty easy. We can do this as either a weekly goal, which is on the left-hand side, labor percent goal, or we can set this up daily. So this is a goals tab within the location record. You can set this up for different goals for different locations too, based on their demographics that they have. Now, when you do it weekly versus daily, daily obviously is better. Will give you more details because we know for a fact that certain days throughout the week, we're going to spend inevitably spend more labor than we would on other days. And so we want to account for that. So maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, my labor goal is a little bit higher than a Thursday, Friday, Saturday when I have a lot of sales coming into the building. This is the enhanced forecasting tool that we have. This one you can set, you can have it settings above store so that your above store managers can go in, directors can go in and help set parameters for the locations. We can copy this over to different locations. And when it gets to the manager, they can come in and they can tweak. They can look at it and they can say, oh, maybe I think I'm going to be a little bit higher in sales, and we can put that in there. We can also drop events down at the bottom, be it Halloween that's coming up, so we can see how we did last year and what we think we're going to do this year for Halloween. If we have coupon drops, LTOs, anything like that, we can put events down there as well to help out with our forecasting. Even for the days you're closed, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, stuff like that, we can do that. Now, the good thing is that if we just set our forecast and we just set our goals, if we only do those two things, once we start actually putting labor into the system and shifts into the scheduler, we're actually going to see what our labor is. And so if you start looking at this one on Tuesday, that's based off my forecast and my goal. And so alone, we're looking at, I'm doing a forecast of 5,700 on Tuesday, and I'm looking to spend about $1,000. So I'm going to be over my goal by about 6% if that's actually true. So I'm not setting myself up for success right there. But the good thing is, if you look at the left-hand side, the red box that we have right there, that's our weekly total. And that's going to start running. The system will actually use what has happened. So say today is Tuesday, yesterday was Monday. Those are actual numbers. It's going to update the weekly total on the left-hand side based on what has happened and what's going to happen in the future. So based off what happened yesterday and what's going to happen for the rest of the week, I'm still going to be running a little bit over where I need to be on my labor. All right. And you can see what you actually forecasted, just below the numbers from Monday to the right of the unassigned. That's a little box that pops up once you hover over it. And it actually shows you what you did forecast. So in this one, I did about 30% less than what I forecasted. So again, just trying to set yourself up for success, having accurate forecasts will help you hit your goal. All right. And now what are we trying to do? What does the curve tell you? So this is the operations dashboard that we have on the Smart Ops side. And this one, I'd always talk about the Ferrari, and that's the black line that you see going across the top. That is once you have the matrix set up in the system. And that's where you can actually assign a certain amount of hours to do per, of labor hours to do per sales hour. And we'll show you that in just a second. But really, what are we trying to find with the curve? So imagine that black line's not there. The top bars are your labor, and the bottom bar is your sales. And you can see that my peak hour for sales for lunch was 1 p.m. But if I look, I had a pretty heavy load of labor before that. I did react at 1 p.m. I went down, and then 2, 3, and 4 is when I started to ramp back up for the night. And if you see it 3 and 4 at the top, it's a yellow bar because we had a little bit more labor on at that time than we really needed. Now, once we hit 5 and 6, 6 o'clock being the peak, we we had close to ample coverage. That's why it's in green. But then you see from 6 to 7, we went from 800 in sales down to 400 in sales. And it looks like we didn't drop labor that much, right? We kind of, from 6 to 7, we pretty much had the same amount of labor as we did at the 5 or the 6 o'clock hour. And so really we're looking to say, okay, where's our opportunity to save? So not only is it when we ramped down and ramped up, but you can also see on the top bars up there, you see some hash marks on the top of those. Those indicate overtime hours as well. And so the overtime hours should be the first hours that you're looking to minimize so that you're able to save money as well. So again, just by doing a couple simple things, we're able to track the labor that we're looking at, right? Now, this is what I was talking about being able to ramp up each job. So when you're looking at that matrix, you can do it as an overall to just say, like if you're a quick serve and all your employees wear multiple hats, everybody does different jobs. You just want to say for every sales hour, say I do 2,000 in sales, I need to have 6 people in the building. But if you're a full service restaurant, you're able to do a matrix for each of the jobs involved. So you're able to do for cooks, you're able to do for bartenders, bussers, servers. And once you get all of those matrix set up, and this is basically saying on the screen that for $250 to $750, I need 2 employees. From 750 to 1250, I'm going to need 3. Once I hit 1250, I go up to 4. So once I have that set up for all of the jobs in the system, then I'm actually able to see on my header in the schedule, I'm able to see how many hours per job I am over or under based on what I have scheduled in the system. So this is where I'm talking about the Ferrari of the schedule system, where we're able to go in and really dissect where the load needs to be for each of the jobs. Are we setting ourselves up for success? Do we have the right people in place and not just bodies in place? All right. And so once we've also gone and we've set up the forecast, we've done our schedule, we've executed our shifts, now we want to go back and we want to see how did we do? And you don't need the metrics set up for this one. This is if as long as you have a schedule written in the system, you can come in and you can see your labor and just like the actual versus theoretical, this is actual labor versus what we had scheduled. And how did we do? And so this will show each of the employees. It shows a lot of information, but really focus on the right-hand side over there. And you can start to see the actual start time, the actual end time, what their scheduled start time and what their scheduled end time is. So a lot of different conversations can be started on this report. We can see versus the variance hours over on the left-hand side, the third column. We can see, okay, this person's working more or less hours than they should be working over, they're going over in time or they're going under in time. But on the right-hand side, we can also start to see, are people coming in too early? Are people staying late? Are people working shifts they shouldn't be working? Are they not working shifts that they should be working? And so you're actually able to start a lot of different conversations over here. But what gets measured gets success. We want to make sure that we're, whatever we're scheduling, as long as the sales are comparable to our forecast, we want to make sure that the labor hours are there just as well. This report also shows you how many overtime hours you have, and so you can also see the culprits when it comes to overtime. All right, so when we're talking about labor, we've got the three key operation reports that we're looking at for labor. The one we were just looking at, the labor actual versus scheduled, the punch details, the overtime warning, and we're also looking at the operational dashboard. All right. So we didn't show the overtime warning report, but with the overtime warning report, that one actually shows you, say you're going into like a Wednesday or Thursday and you're coming into the weekend, and it'll show you what people have worked throughout the week and what they have left scheduled, and it'll show you when they will, what shift and at what time they will hit their overtime. And so you can make adjustments if needed for that to minimize the overtime coming in. All right, so I really appreciate you guys paying attention. Some key takeaways that we want to take with us is that accurate real-time insights into food costs is key to controlling them and boosting your margins, which helps you make money. Control those costs like a boss. There's, I always talk about the conversation starters. There's so much information that's coming into the system. And, vast amounts of information can be gleaned from your inventory cycles and processes if you have the right tools and continually analyze it. Make sure we analyze and act on information about your inventory that can help reduce the COGS. If you identify items that are coming in at a higher price, make sure that we're mitigating that. And increase profitability in a shifting landscape. Commodities are always changing costs. We need to focus on those. And when we're scheduling, it's important to stick to the plan. Make sure we have a great forecast. Make sure we have a great schedule to that forecast. And then if we have to run an audible because we're making more sales than we forecasted, let's be proactive and instead of reactive. All right.
Okay, thank you so much, Paul. We really appreciate it. Before we move on to the Q&A, we just have a quick poll here. It should pop up on the front of your screen. We'll give you about a minute to fill it out. Couple more seconds here. Okay, we'll go ahead and end it. Let's move on to the Q&A. So we have time for just a couple quick questions. So the first one, Paul, if you're ready, how
Sure.
how often should we run an actual versus theoretical report, and what benchmarks should we aim for?
Yeah, absolutely. So, actual versus theoretical, like I was talking before, the beauty of it is you can do it just based off of the stock counts that you do, inventory counts that you do. So if you want to do it on a daily basis, if you want to do it on a weekly basis, if you want to do it on a monthly basis, that's fine. But, when you're looking at doing it on a monthly basis, you have many days, few weeks that you don't have insight into what's happening in the back, right? And so we're really looking to make sure that we at least have some daily counts on your key items and making sure that you have the majority of items on a weekly count. And as far as the benchmark goes, you have to set that benchmark. Do a couple of inventory counts, look at what your variances are, make sure you have good practices in place, come up with a good number as a start. When I ran this in Darden, we started at like almost in the double digits. I think 11% is where we started when we first rolled it out. But after 5 years of using it, I think our goal was 4%, right? So that's always what you said. What gets measured gets results.
Great. Okay, next question. How can labor dashboards and overtime warnings prevent overspending on payroll?
I mean, overtime, that's the easy one right there, is that, you're paying someone time and a half to do the same job that they were doing when they were in regular time. So as long as you can mitigate your OT, you're definitely looking to reduce your cost. And one of the easiest ways to kind of shave 15 minutes, 30 minutes here and there is just what we looked at on that dashboard, where we're looking to make sure we're loading and, unloading labor as sales dictates. I think we used to call it cutting the fat, right? You have a certain amount of people in the building, you need a certain amount of sales to pay for those people. If you don't have those sales in there, you don't need those people in there.
Okay, and our last question here, what metrics should managers track to adjust labor in real time?
What metrics should we look at to track labor in real time?
Mhm.
Well, we do offer intraday polling, and so that dashboard that you did see, if that comes in, intraday polling comes in 15-minute increments. So you're able to look at that and you can see sales that are coming in at the 15 minutes versus your labor. And so, be it at the end of your peak hour, you can start to look at it. If you're coming in for your PM shift, you can look and see how the AM did. You can go back to the previous week and look how the matrix was then, and compare it to the real time, what you're doing right now as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Paul. We'll move on now. We're almost to the top of the hour, but before we let you all go, we wanted to quickly share that we have one more stop left on our restaurant transformation tour. So there's still time to sign up. We're about a month and 2 weeks out. So it'll be a great, great day. You'll hear from people like Paul with presentations like we just had today. So we definitely hope to see you there. You can buy tickets now. And this concludes our webinar. So you'll receive an email with a link to download the recording, to listen again, and share with your colleagues. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you soon. Bye.